Pony Shake here with the Bike Channel, and I had something I wanted to go over. I've been tearing apart some of the older components and servicing them, seeing what's good, what's bad, what to get rid of and pitch, and what to actually try to keep for future builds or for those people who might need it. And instead of having to spend my own money on it, if I can help somebody out by having freshly serviced parts in my parts bins, then I'll do so. That's why a lot of these parts, I keep them and hang on to them. But while doing so, I ran into the idea of, most people, they see a mechanical disc brake. They go on two lines, basically. They either leave it on the bike forever, never service it, never understand how it works, never understand why eventually it degrades over time and gets a little, stickier and stickier in its range of motion. Or other people just take it off and pitch it and immediately upgrade to hydraulic if they got a bike that came with mechanical discs. And there's a number of thoughts about that. Hydraulics do offer, of course, improved performance over mechanical. That's not debatable at all. But mechanicals do have a nice simplicity to them. In the way they function, the way you set them up, it's traditional cable coming in, anchor it, set up the two pads. One you literally just adjust. In the inboard one, you adjust it normally with a 5mm Allen by turning either clockwise or counterclockwise, and that of course makes the pad go further in or retract it out in case it's dragging on the rotor. And then once you have that set, of course you just, either if your caliper comes with a barrel adjuster, or you just have to set based on the pull itself. And of course that leverage arm has a little pusher that goes into the other pad and just literally shoves it out, as you can see there. And of course, by it clamping down, it hits the disc brake rotor and slows you down. So what's two of these? I got a Pro Max here, which that's actually a decent mechanical that came off of an old free ride bike, very old one. So this is the one I was actually servicing to keep and clean, and then all I had to do is replace the pads. They actually still have a little life. This might find a home on another bike in case somebody is in need. But while doing that, I wanted to get to the point of showing how these work. Don't know how many videos are out there that show it, but I wanted to do so myself here. So on the workbench, these are very, very, very simple to take apart, and if you want to clean them, service them, it's very, very easy to do. You start normally, again, with that 5mm Allen. You take the backer off, and a lot of times the inboard pad, or as I just refer to it, the stationary pad, I'd say 97% of calipers work this way if they're mechanical discs. Then you just pull the other pad off. So typically, and what I mean by 97% work this way is one pad is stationary, and that's the one that gets adjusted with this just being turned on a threaded, basically a threaded shoulder here, and it just goes in and out depending on turning clockwise or counterclockwise. So by doing that, you set the inboard or stationary pad, and then you have the movable pad. That is, like I had previously said, it's literally smushed into the rotor, and then the rotor flexes a little bit over into the stationary pad. And I actually let me just grab a rotor and we'll just show when this gets clamped, this rotor literally gets shoved over because it'll ride somewhere in the middle. You hope to set it with no drag on either pad, but this ends up coming out, and as this clamps down, it will shove the rotor into the other side. And that is exactly how it works. It flexes the rotor a little bit. And by doing so, you get both pads contacting. There's flaws to that. And quickly, it means that the movable pad, if you want to call it the outboard, it's going to get twice the wear because it is getting pushed into the outboard or the inboard pad, stationary. I'm just going to go with stationary. The stationary pad gets pushed into. Well, that means the pad that moves here by the leverage arm, it is actually contacting the rotor early, which then, of course, increases its wear, and then all the force is being applied to the movable pad into the rotor to smash it into the stationary pad. So you typically will have uneven pad wear. And as you can see here, that's fairly evident. This one has quite a bit more material left because it was the stationary pad. I was checking this. This was actually like over double the material on the stationary side. It had over double the material left. As you can see, actually that's very evident. You can see the blue mark there. This pad looks almost new, whereas this pad, it's got like a little over half of its life left, but that's the one that looks, after cleaning up and servicing it, it's ready to mount. But that one came off a bike with 203 millimeter rotors, and you can tell that it had been used heavily. But to take it apart, of course, we'll get back to what we're here for. You take this out, just completely unthread it all the way out, and it'll pull the pad with it most of the time, so set that aside. Pull your other pad out. It's literally just grab this little tab, because it's magnetic retention. It's just magnetically held in place. You can easily overpower that and slide up and out. You can save your old pads. If you want to go get replacements, easy to go to your local bike shop and just do an exchange. Now, on any of these, there is always a retaining bolt, and typically it's a smaller Allen wrench. This Promax uses a 3 millimeter, and this wonderful brand Sparkle. I'm not making that up. That is Sparkle brand. That uses a 4 millimeter. And all you do is you do want to now hold, since the pads are out and since the stationary side is completely out, that allows you to put your finger here to hold this little pusher. If it was hydraulic, I'd call it a piston, but you hold that in place while you unthread the retention bolt. Again, like I said, this is a 4 millimeter Allen. Go ahead and finish that off by hand. Set that aside. Now, be ready for that to spring up, because again, 90% of these, there's only a couple other designs. Tektro or TRP, they have a dual mechanism. The Paul clampers, you have a couple others, but most use this design. And what you'll find is when you pop off this leverage arm, you'll find a dust seal. Set that aside, and you'll find this nice little spring here that has an anchor point at the top and at the bottom, and a lot of them are oriented with a larger diameter down here at the bottom that goes towards the caliper side, and a smaller diameter top towards the leverage arm. You can set that aside, and now the important part is to not let this come apart. That's why keeping some finger pressure there. If it's an old one, it's probably going to be grimy, so you may not have as much worry. But inside here are the key components. The ball bearings. Now, if you want to, you can use a magnetic flathead screwdriver to help hold. There's the ball bearings. There's one. And this is the key. And this is why you don't want to lose any of this. And you can even take your flathead screwdriver to keep track of these, or use a magnetic parts tray. My parts tray is full right now, so magnetic screwdriver it is. Good enough on my whiteboard here. And this one is a little different. I've already serviced and taken apart the Promax and put it back together, but they all work very similar. As you can look down in there, you see 3, we'll call them segments or ramps. That is a ramp design, but from first view, you're like, oh, it looks like 3 little bugs going around in a circle. That is a ramp design. Sometimes the ramp is on the we'll say the pusher, and sometimes it's inside of the caliper, and sometimes it's on both. The Pro Max has it only on the caliper, just like you're seeing here, and not here. On this, we'll call it the pusher, it has 3 spots for the ball bearings to drop into, and then the ramps are only on the caliper side. This one has ramps on both sides. And how that works is actually quite neat. When the ball bearing is sitting in its resting position, it's down as low as can be. And then as you turn, when you pull your brake lever and it rotates that leverage arm, it makes this turn. And then as this turns, the ball bearing goes up the ramp. Now, because there's a ramp on both sides, what it does is this seats at its deepest point. So think all the way forward, as I'm pointing there, all the way forward there, and all the way forward here. So this little leverage arm that's attached to this, as it rotates this pusher, as it rotates it, it's working counter of these ramps. Because even though these are, mirrored identical images, this gets rotated and pushed in. So they're opposing ramps. So the ball bearing will be sitting down in this, and then down in the lowest, deepest spot on that ramp, which means these will be the closest together possible. Because, of course, this goes all the way into this side. So then when you turn this, then it starts to go to the shallowest point of the ramp here, and the shallowest point of the ramp there. And that ball bearing, with the 3 of them, they get to where they actually push this through its rotation out. I should be rotating this way. And as those ball bearings drive up the ramp, this pushes out this way. So it retracts in. I'm exaggerating it for effect, but it retracts in when they sink down into the deepest point of the ramps. And then they actually force this out as they drive to the shallow point of the ramps. Very neat. Very, very neat design for me. I love seeing how things work. Now, you're thinking, well, geez, you've rambled on and on. Why is this even important? Well, if you have a quality ball bearing design like this, just a quality one, we're not going to talk about sparkle. Sparkle's not quality. That's cheap as can be. But let's take at least Pro Max quality, Tektro, the Avid BB5, BB7s, and if they use the same exact design, they're all serviceable basically for all eternity. It's a very, very simple design that is easy to work with. And I think that's the big benefit. Now, all you have to do, I actually have already done this to save us some time. Once you get this apart, you spray some degreaser in. Keep your pads away. If you're going to reuse the pads, keep them away. Or if you're like me, if I'm going to use this, if I'm going to keep it as a spare, I'll throw some fresh pads in. They're cheap. That's one of the cheapest things you can do to get the biggest improvement. Fresh pads, quality pads. Even a cheapo off-brand OEM caliper like this, with good pads, can perform decently. But get all your parts out, wipe them down just with a rag, throw some degreaser, clean it out. Make sure that everything is very clean. Because, yes, it does have this little dust seal. They all do. It has a little lip on the larger end here that does seat. When it's reassembled, it seats into here towards the caliper to help keep some grime and moisture out, and then it seats up inside of this pivot arm and it helps, but it's not perfect. It's not really a great seal. It's okay. So you clean all this out with some degreaser, clean this off, do all that. I've already done it all. But once that's done, you put a little bit of grease down here. You can actually put it on the ball bearings themselves if you want to. And then drop them down in. And you can also just roll it down the side of the caliper and then kind of push them into place. So you just get them in there, move this one around, and get it to drop down into that ramp. So there. The 3 ball bearings back down in the 3 ramps. And then you get this put back in place. This is a little tricky. It is always for me. You just have to get that to drop down in all the way and through, like so. Pull it up. Make sure it seats. That's the important part. It has to be seated at its lowest possible. And then flip it over while holding it. Spring goes back in. The little dust seal goes over the top. Rotate it to where I'm used to it. And then anchor point goes down to the caliper. Anchor point goes into the leverage arm. And then you orient it to line it up. This one has a hexagonal shape. The Promax has it's like a ovalized 4-sided design kind of. And then tighten the arm back down and ensure that the function is good. You can see now that that is pushing out, so we're all good there. Actually, give it another little twist. Finger tight, or finger start this one, so we don't cross thread. And then there we go. And then start if you want to, if you're going to reuse the pads, then you can place your pads back in place. And turned it in just a little too far. Back it up, drop it in. Pads are back in place. This is ready to remount now. And now what I was alluding to is, why do that? Why bother? You'd think, okay, in this age of consumerism, let's just go buy a new caliper. This thing is worth what? 10 bucks? But now it functions buttery smooth. And that's the main drawback, is that, over time, these will degrade. Now, I'm not real worried about the Sparkle one, but this Promax one, it went from feeling rough, like it was actually struggling to rotate smoothly, to now it feels great. It's snappy, real nice and clean. I've re-greased it and it's ready to go. And that one, I mean, somebody can get years of use out of it. And that's why to do this is, if you're not necessarily going to go try to upgrade immediately, if you're the type that wants to get the most use out of something, even if it is basic, or if you're like me and in some applications you don't need hydraulic discs, like say a gravel bike, or just to run around town, kind of beater, and but you do want it to work properly, that's when you'd actually take the time to do this. It's not hard, it's not complicated, and you can make something that's fairly simple and inexpensive still perform well. So that's a little bit of background on how the mechanical disc brake calipers work, and that is applicable to most. That's how it works, how to service them, kind of all in one. If you like this video and you like the in-depth look at it, please give me a thumbs up if you did enjoy it. And if you didn't, well, feel free to let me know why. And until next time, hopefully I keep you entertained well enough that you do come around for next time, and hopefully you'll subscribe and we can continue on chatting and rambling about bikes forever. Till next time, it's Mongoose Jake saying thanks for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this.